Research Talk. I hope you are enjoying our journey together on qualitative research. As you know, uh, we are talking about data analysis in qualitative research, and in previous videos we talked about what are some important things to keep in mind before you start your actual coding of your transcripts or your observation data. So today we are going to start with our first cycle of coding strategies. What I mean the first cycle of coding is in qualitative research, when you start coding, so you do first round of coding, and let's say you came up with 200 codes. Now what you do a second cycle of coding, which try to minimize these large number of codes into smaller number of codes, and we call it second cycle of coding. And then we do another cycle of coding, we call it third cycle of coding, where we try to see the pattern and come up with themes, processes emerging from that data. So in general, in qualitative research, coding, you could say, like, works in three cycles or three stages: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, or cycle 1, cycle 2, and cycle 3. So today we are going to start with our coding strategies, which are applied and used in first cycle of coding, or you could say phase 1 of coding. And phase 1 or first cycle include many strategies. So in today's video, I'll talk about a very popular strategy, which is called descriptive coding strategy. Descriptive coding strategy is very popular among novice researchers, beginning researchers, and in terms of analytic, it's not very deep. So that's what makes it very popular among beginning researchers. It's relatively, I would say, simple way to code the data. So what happens in descriptive coding is you use a noun phrase, which sometimes maybe just a word or a noun phrase that describe what is happening, what is there, or what do you observe in the transcript that you are looking at, or the datum, or this portion of the data that you are trying to code. So basically what is happening is you look at the excerpt, let's say a couple of sentences or maybe one sentence, and you try to see what is happening here. And then you use a code that describe that what is happening there. And these codes are, as I said, keep that in mind, they are nouns. So it could be a single word noun, or could be a noun phrase or a collection of words. So let me give you an example. Let's say if I'm doing a study on understanding teachers' experiences of integrating online teaching during COVID time. And let's say I interview teachers and I have a interview transcript that I need to code. So let's say the teacher is describing some of the challenges they are facing in terms of integrating online teaching. So what one of the possible code would be, maybe student teacher relationship. A possible code, and I'm just taking some examples here, not really like coding it here. Maybe like student teacher, let's say I would say, classroom engagement. So what do you see? These words, three words: student-teacher relationship, classroom engagement. Two words, three words. And one thing you notice, they are noun, N-O-U-N, noun phrase. So maybe a single word or maybe a combination of word, but they should be nouns and they describe what is happening there. So that's one of the key feature of descriptive coding about you use as a researcher noun to as a code to describe what is happening. As you see, the descriptive word is like, as a researcher, you describe with the help of a noun phrase or nouns. Some of the benefits, or you could say the strength of this way of coding is it it helps in describing the data, uh, identifying features, features in the data, elements in the data, or concepts in the data. So this is some of the strengths. So when you do descriptive coding, you are reading the excerpt and then you are using a code which is noun. And what it does, because it's a noun, it helps in describing some of the features which is in the transcript, elements in the transcript, or the concepts being discussed in the transcript. So these are some of the strength of this approach of doing coding. A key limitation of this approach is it doesn't get deeper into the analysis. So what it does is it simply describes with the help of nouns uh, the data, the elements, the features of the data, the aspects being discussed, the concepts being discussed, but it does not let you go deeper than that, such as what are some underlying factors there. So cannot help in identifying underlying social processes and factors. So in other words, you could say it's a bit surface level coding. It helps you to understand the features of the data. It helps you to describe the setting. It helps you to describe the concepts being discussed, but it doesn't go deeper to identify what is happening, what are some important social processes are happening in this data. So that's a key limitation of this descriptive coding approach. So basically, things we should keep in mind is descriptive coding is useful if I'm coding a field note. So why it is useful in field note coding? Because in field notes, what we do mostly, we observe and describe the setting, describe the activity that we are observing. So basically, it's a description of the environment, description of the setting that we are in. And since it is a description, descriptive coding helps us to identify the features of that setting, the elements of those settings, and the concepts in those settings. So that's briefly about descriptive coding. This is kind of a popular approach, particularly among beginning researchers. And let me show you. Let me show you a real coding process on my computer, and it will make it more helpful in the sense like you get a sense of how you do descriptive coding. So here you could see a field note, not an interview transcript, from a research study. The researcher, you could see on the top, it's about observation of digital learning in high school classroom. And the research study is about integrating technology into classroom learning, teaching, sorry. So you see the date, time, location, and so when you do, whenever you write your observation notes, your field notes, you first put all these information, date, time, location, who is doing the observation, and what this observation is about. So I'm going to show you how to do a descriptive coding of this field note. So let's begin. First thing first, I want to create a right side margin so that I could write my codes on the right side. And to do that, I'm going to select all these notes, field notes, and then I'll go to layout on the top and then margins. I hit margins and I'll come to custom margins. Now you see bottom and right here. On the right, it shows 1 inch. I want it like 2.5 inch so that I could put my quotes there. So let's do that. And then I hit OK. And you see all these notes are now moved on the left side, and I have space 2.5 inches on the right side to write my quotes. All right, so let's begin this coding this field note. So you could see that the first section is setting description. So the researcher is talking about describing the setting, and the setting is obviously a classroom, a room number 108, and he talks about that it is a spacious, well-lit classroom on the first floor of Lincoln High School. The walls are adorned with educational posters that include motivational quotes, science concepts, and a large periodic table. The room is equipped with a smartboard at the front, surrounded by whiteboards on either side. Tables are arranged in groups of 4 throughout the room, each with a tablet docket station. The tablets are the main focus for today's observation, as they are integral to the digital learning platform being utilized. So that's the researcher has written the description of the setting where he is doing the observation. So let's code. And if you remember in descriptive coding, what we do, we use noun phrases, maybe a simple one-word noun or a collection of noun words together, noun phrase, to describe what we see in the data. So if we observe, we see a concept, we see a phenomenon, whatever we see, we use a noun phrase as a code to describe our observation. So we use noun phrase as a coding strategy here. So looking at this excerpt, I can code it as Before I do that, let me insert a text box to do the coding. So here is the excerpt, and let's begin. So I can code it a spacious and well-lit environment. Then I can, oh sorry, let me correct that, environment. I can also code the other sentence which talks about how the walls are decorated with periodic table and inspirational quotations. So inspirational and educational wall decor. Further in the same excerpt, they talk about how the classroom is organized with all the technological equipment. So I could say, I could write a code like advanced technological equipment. Further, this paragraph also talks about how the classroom is organized, which is more collaborative, table groups. And finally, it talks about how the digital learning platforms are integrated on each uh, table. So I could write digital learning platform integration. So these are a few descriptive codes I have come up with. Uh, as I said previously, that coding is an interpretive work. So if you are thinking about slightly different codes, that's perfectly fine because it's an act of interpretation. Okay, so that's some of the codes. Another thing you might have noticed here that these codes are nouns. I'm using nouns: spacious and well-lit environment, inspirational and educational wall decor, advanced technological equipment. So collaborative table groups. So they are describing uh, by using these noun phrases. So that's an important thing to keep in mind when we code in this particular approach. Now let's code the next paragraph, which is about activity. And it says the lesson begins promptly at 9 a.m. with Miss Johnson, the science teacher, welcoming the students and directing them to log into their tablets. Today's focus is on interactive simulations related to chemical reactions. Students work in their groups, navigating through the simulations, while Ms. Johnson circulates the room, offering guidance and answering questions. Midway through the class, students individually complete quizzes on the platform, testing their understanding of the concepts. So now let's code here with our descriptive coding strategy. Sorry. So based on how what is described here, I can use a code like structured lesson start. So Ms. Johnson is very structured here in her planning. And then I can code it interactive simulation on chemical reactions, right? That's what is happening here. Let's do some more. We could also see active teacher facilitation, and finally we also see here quizzes that she's using to assess understanding of students. So individual quizzes to for conceptual understanding. Let's keep going. Now let's code the next paragraph here where the researcher talks about interactions in the classroom. The atmosphere is one of focused engagement. Students are actively discussing within their groups, pointing out observations from the simulations and occasionally debating answers before submitting them on the platform. Ms. Johnson's interactions with the students are supportive yet challenging, pushing them to explain their reasoning and think critically about the simulations. There is a noticeable camaraderie among students, with more knowledgeable individuals taking the time to explain concepts to their peers. So now let's code this paragraph. So focused engagement atmosphere. That's what the first sentence talks about. Another thing that I can see here is, and I can code it, active peer discussion and critical debate, which we could see here, the interactions, which is occasionally debating answers before submitting them on so there is debate, discussion happening here. I can also use a code which is, reading this seems like Ms. Johnson is supportive and challenging. So supportive and challenging teacher interaction. And finally, in the last sentence, you could see there is a noticeable camaraderie among students, with more knowledgeable individuals taking the time to explain concepts to their peers. So let me code this one too here. And we can use a code like peer-to-peer teaching. Peer teaching is happening here as well. What did you notice here? So what I'm doing is I'm I'm using quotes. Obviously, these are all nouns, noun phrases, and these quotes are focused on describing, highlighting the elements, highlighting the processes, highlighting what is happening here through the description. So, and they're all noun phrases. So that's what it looks like. And that's why it is called, this approach of coding, we call it descriptive coding method. So let's summarize it. In descriptive coding method, a researcher, they read the transcript and then they find a noun phrase that describes what is happening, what is being highlighted in the transcript. And you all could see here the codes I have generated. They are all grounded in the data that this observation report and they are all noun-based description of what we have noticed in this field note. I hope it clarifies or at least give you a sense of what a descriptive coding looks like in practice. And if you have any questions about this particular way of coding your data, you can leave a comment and get in touch with me, and I can provide you more information or any questions or concerns that you may have. Thank you and have a good rest of the day, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.